name is Stani Kulechov. I'm the founder of ETHLend, which is a decentralized application running on the Ethereum blockchain network. This here is Martin Wichmann. He's our head of token sale, and he's also helping in other stuff on the venture. We have a total of, I think, 25 people now.
The core team.
Yeah, working on the project. Not as developers, but all kind of also sort of tasks. Today's topic is going to be dApps, as you guys know, decentralized applications. Before I go to the topic, may I ask how many of you guys are developers here? Okay, that's a nice amount. How many of you guys develop Ethereum Solidity or blockchain-related stuff? Okay, yeah, there was some spark there. Great, because Martin here is a person with a business background, and I'm a person with a legal background. So basically, I think this is an interesting combination here. Yeah, let's move to the topic. Basically, there's some differences between applications and decentralized applications. Basically, from the user perspective, what kind of features, for example, ETHLend looks, why we kind of chosen to develop under the smart contracts and with the decentralized model. Basically, the lack of centralization, that you don't have a central database where the data is stored. So basically, when we have the possibility to have a distributed ledger, when we have the same data in different places, it's more resistant to tampering. Well, it's not maybe foolproof, but it's resistant. And maybe the next thing that comes to our mind from the kind of technical user perspective, but basically is that we have a trustless environment. What's trustless? That's a good question, because it's hard to define. But we can go so far as basically that the idea of blockchain and smart contract is that basically once you have deployed the smart contract on the distributed ledger, it's hard to tamper after that. So basically, people don't have to trust you, the company or the developers behind of the application, because when people see, the user will see the code and how the code will function. That's basically eliminates the trust between and the need of the third party. But it has its drawbacks, because I don't know how many of you guys have seen like Solidity code here. Okay, fine, that's a good amount. And basically, how many of you guys understand it? I don't, so it's exactly. So basically, you can trust the code, but no one understands the code. And basically, that's the biggest argument in the whole Ethereum and blockchain, is that basically we have these ICOs, we have these decentralized applications. You don't need to trust the provider, because you can see the code, you know how the code functions. But the biggest thing is that nobody knows how the freaking code works. I mean, it's a new code. So basically, that's a challenge. And from user perspective and kind of the benefits that the distributed ledger has, that you have the possibility to tokenize real-world assets. Basically, you can represent some sort of data in a smaller piece from the real world. It can be, for example, a common example of tokenization is just a small piece of data that tells you that it's resistant to tampering and tells you that you own certain asset, for example. There has been projects on Ethereum, for example, tokenizing gold. There's DigixDAO, for example, which we recently partnered with, and other projects that tries to kind of eliminate the transaction costs of real-world assets or share transfers. So there's quite of interesting use cases. At the moment, the tokenization is kind of a big topic on the ICOs. Like you participate in a crowd sale, and then you get tokens, and then you don't know what the hell are these tokens, basically. So that's the biggest thing on the tokenization at the moment. Then about kind of transactions, the main issue now with Ethereum is the scalability, and that's something that we suffer. For example, when you want to place a loan request on our decentralized application, it might take from I would say from 40 seconds to 5-6 minutes, depending on how busy the Ethereum network is. So kind of the whole lending experience can be from one side of the for example, the borrower side, it can take 10 to 15 minutes, which isn't kind of convenient, and that's kind of issue. But compared to like traditional banking, when you apply a loan in a bank, for example, or you transfer funds to another place in the world, for example, if I transfer funds to my friend in India, it might take even a week or several days. So basically with Ethereum, actually that's how I transfer funds nowadays. I just transfer Ethereum basically. So there are kind of speedy transactions, but when it comes to confirming these transactions, it might take some amount of time. And regarding the Ethereum blockchain and the dApps, basically I think not so many of the ledgers, like for example, that you can develop applications on top of. I think you can do on Bitcoin something at the moment. I think there is some sort of way to build some small kind of smart contracts. Not quite sure, but basically there isn't that many of choices at the moment. So basically, because Ethereum has been popular one, we choose to build basically our application on Ethereum network. And the basic kind of I would say like these components are what the Ethereum network consists of. So we have the distributed ledger, which is like the blockchain as we know it. Then we have the smart contracts here. Well, basically you develop the smart contract and then you deploy it basically, and everyone can check the smart contract and basically decide whether they participate in that transaction. And also the benefits are that these transactions are irreversible, and also there's the tokenization, which we went, and also the gas. So basically, to avoid kind of spam in the network, you pay small mining fee on the basis that basically you are using the network. So these components consist of the kind of infrastructure on the current mainnet on Ethereum. Yeah. About decentralized lending and ETHLend. So basically, ETHLend is a fully decentralized peer-to-peer lending application on the Ethereum blockchain. And basically, we conduct secured loans. So basically, you can pledge your tokens. Is there anyone that actually has some kind of tokens? Like, okay. So basically, you guys can now also pledge tokens without selling them to get a loan. So that's the basically idea of ETHLend. So that's our current status quo, and we're trying to kind of take the next step to basically add KYC and also kind of try to establish like non-secured loans. And if you kind of the difficult part is that when you speak about decentralization and fully decentralization, I think it's difficult to assess that what is actually fully decentralized, because how do you access this freaking application, you always have to have some sort of domain. So that also ties you to centralization. So if you see like a topic about like being fully decentralized, there isn't one, because I think like the code doesn't live in a vacuum. So I think even that we state that we are fully decentralized, but the fact is that if we would be fully decentralized, then we wouldn't even have a user interface. So that's the way I see the decentralization. So what's our kind of problems that we are trying to solve? Well, basically at the current state, lending is limited to local lenders, for example. There's like peer-to-peer lending platforms in almost every country at these days, and kind of a good competition in there that way. So what we're actually trying to build is a global lending market. So basically, instead of a Finnish lender, for example, or Finnish borrower, instead of applying loans from Finnish banks and peer-to-peer lenders, the same borrower could actually place one single loan request and access the capital of all around the world. For example, person from India, person from China, or UK could fund that loan, for example. Or these people can actually compete with your loan request and basically give you the best interest rate offer. So that's something that we are currently heading for. And I want to keep you in mind that our application is kind of alpha version, so it's not in kind of we are not there yet, but that's our kind of vision. And basically our idea is to provide more liquidity to markets where there is kind of insufficiency of liquidity. For example, it can be like, for example, places like Vietnam or Venezuela, and that's our kind of goal. And more or less, kind of lending these days is quite slow. And basically, when you place a loan request or you apply for a loan, it might take, like with the banking, a couple of days. We're trying to create a kind of lending experience that's over with, starts within kind of seconds and it's over within minutes. So that's kind of what we are trying to achieve. Moreover, kind of having like a global lending market, it's difficult these days because basically you have different banking systems in globally, basically. So if I would send euros to an Indian guy from today, he might see the currency, for example, within few days or a week before even the kind of loan takes place. So that's our kind of idea, and also kind of eliminate the intermediaries, for example, banks, peer-to-peer lenders. Basically, our goal is that there is just smart contract that is functioning there, and basically no third parties are needed. Okay, if you take a quick look at the app, so basically you can access ETHLend at the moment. It's at app.ethlend.io, and basically you need a MetaMask, which is a browser that lets you connect to the Ethereum network from your browser. So it's a plugin. So basically, how the idea is that you basically create a new loan request, which creates a new smart contract. When the code is deployed, you basically will set the data. So you will set the Ether amount, days to lend, and the token that you want to place as a collateral, and also the token address, basically. What is the token smart contract address? And then you actually set the data, and the loan request is created. And after that, you have to basically deliver the collateral. So basically, the amount of tokens that you want to pledge, you will basically send to the loan request address. And once you set, the loan is set for funding stage. After that point, basically, anyone with the browser and MetaMask and some Ether, of course, can actually fund this loan request, either by sending the Ether to the address or just by pressing the function that will call the funding transfer function. So basically, At the moment, we're kind of quite bare on the user interface here, but there are a lot of stuff that can be improved. For example, that our actually goal is to improve collateral management as well, and basically kind of set some sort of recommendations for the borrower what kind of collateral he needs to deliver so that it's sufficient. And basically, this is the MetaMask. So I think like in a lot of the app development, it's quite heavily used, mostly because you can basically call functions through MetaMask. So it's kind of comfortable compared to that you actually run the code from your Remix address. So it's kind of convenient. And basically, we have a state here where we have different loan agreements. And if you can see, basically there isn't like a name of the lender or borrower. You just have the Ethereum addresses like borrower, lender, and the states, finished, default, and so forth. So it's kind of a pseudo-anonymic at the moment. But of course, at some point, we will have to have different kinds of implementations that really that the people are recognized who are placing the loan request and funds these loan requests. Okay, maybe this is an interesting topic. Well, smart contracts are like secure by design, but it's true because you have the ledger, but in kind of a normal way, it's kind of bullshit because everybody remembers the DAO hack, for example, and also kind of even though you have a secure contract, I mean you have a code that you have audited or you have had 2-3 auditors, there still can be some sort of mishaps there. So basically, I think the most emphasis as you guys, if you are developing or will be developing Solidity code, is to emphasize on the security, because that's the kind of main concern. If your smart contract will fail, that will be like a big disaster. Yeah, and also kind of also the development like on Solidity and smart contract audits, they can be quite expensive at the moment because there isn't much of professionals there that actually work with smart contracts. I think like the average that people pay for 300 lines of code is somewhere between 30,000-40,000 K. So if you have like spare time, I would recommend to do some sort of Solidity auditing. Might be a good profitable hobby for you guys. Yeah, but the main idea is that, for example, when the smart contract is deployed, it can't be changed. For example, we as a ETHLend, we cannot stop the transaction. I mean, there's nothing to do. The code will function that way that it has been deployed. So that gives certainty for the lender and the borrower, and they don't need to trust ETHLend, for example, holding the collateral, because in our smart contracts, basically the collateral is held by the smart contract itself, so we don't hold any funds. But on the other hand, if you have a buggy code, then you're screwed. So I could advise like forever about the security. And of course, the best thing of the blockchain is, at least in Ethereum, that you can actually see the transactions. You can view it from for example, Etherscan, a block explorer that has the transaction, has it failed or what's happened with that. And of course, that's kind of a good element on the kind of when we are providing kind of more trust on our applications. And Martin can basically introduce a bit about what we are actually developing now and what's going to happen in future in ETHLend.
All right, sure. Hey, hello everyone. So basically, there you can see what we've accomplished so far. So we have the app up and running, which is kind of different compared with majority of the ICOs. Also, we can use the ENS as collateral reputation-based lending. So basically what we did there is we created CRE, which is our credibility token basically. It's only internally on the application, so it's not tradable, it won't be a speculative asset, but we still feel that it's one way for us to basically create a how to say it, like a reputation and a credit history in a decentralized environment, and this is a big challenge for sure. Yeah, basically next year we're gonna start upgrading the user experience. So currently it's accessible with a Chrome browser and a MetaMask plugin, but for a non-technical person such as myself, it's not the most user-friendly experience.
I like MetaMask.
Yeah, sure you do. But yeah, otherwise the user interface, we will also work on that at the same time. Other interesting aspects are, of course, these centralized gateways and KYC. So once again, to create a credit rating and a credit history, we are also adding KYC on the platform. It's still because KYC basically goes against the fundamental idea of decentralization, so it might be an additional function for, let's say, B2B loans or something like this, and then we'll have the completely anonymous lending available as well. We'll see. This is something we're still procrastinating on internally. Adding Bitcoin as collateral would be awesome because that's the most used currency. That would also hopefully get us a lot of new customers and users. But yeah, other altcoins as well, but that is basically where we're waiting for these atomic cross-chain swaps to make this kind of stuff possible. But yeah, that is basically, then there's the general roadmap. So what we've done so far this year is release the application, the proof of concept basically. We have the white paper out, it's on GitHub, so anyone can take a look and see what we're doing. We've actually made a couple of changes to the white paper before the pre-ICO. For example, we gave up with the buyback model and introduced the airdrops instead. So yeah, it's a living, breathing document that we're upgrading and updating as we move forward. And of course, after the token sale, then making changes becomes once again a bit questionable, but yeah. So far, so good. And yeah, we had the pre-token sale last month, 25th of September. We closed it in, or we were going for 2,000 Ether, so approximately like $600,000. And we closed it in 3 days, 77 hours. So huge success from our part, because we've been, so far we have the core team of, let's say 20, 25 people. On top of that, we have the management team of approximately 10 people, and all of these people have been working without any salary or any compensation so far. So the fact that we actually managed to close the pre-sale pretty fast, that was great for us to see that we actually are accomplishing something. And we'll have the token sale 25th of November this year, and it will go on until 27th December. So yeah, that will be the big effort, and that's why that is basically where or how we're using the pre-sale tokens. So we will start the marketing, actually paid advertising and this type of stuff to get the traction and visibility. And yeah, next year, once we finish the token sale, we will, by next year, we have already reallocated to Zug. So that would be Switzerland, a place called Crypto Valley, which is supposed to become a crypto-friendly environment in the Europe. And we see a lot of potential there. So what we will be doing is basically creating a foundation, the ITLAND Foundation in Zug. And yeah, that's, but that will be done by the end of this year, beginning of next year. And yeah, then we will start developing further the application, of course, user experience, user interface, all this kind of stuff. We are still considering the possibility of doing a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. But from a regulatory point of view, that might be a challenge. So that is something we have to, you know, see as the legal or the legislation develops. We'll see what the direction we should take regarding this topic. But what that would basically mean is that the community would be responsible for governing the project. So yeah, that would be on a, theoretically that would be awesome, but on a practical level, let's see if it's doable. But yeah, that would include then the voting system I'm proposing of new, upgrades. But yeah, all right. Well, we pretty much covered already the fact that we closed the pre-sale last month and the actual ICO, the big one. That would be, it's lining it a bit wrong. But yeah, anyways, that would be 37,600 Ether, I believe.
Yeah, 27,600.
37,600. Yeah. But yeah, that would be approximately like a bit over 10 million USD. From an ICO point of view, it's small. I know saying that 10 million is small sounds ridiculous and oxymoronic, but if you compare with the big ones like
Bancor or
Filecoin, Bancor, Tezos, EOS, those are the big ones. And we were first going for 35, 40 million, something like this, but we decided that let's bring it down because that is more than enough for us to maintain operations for the foreseeable future. And once we do all the upgrades and developments that are outlined in our timeline and white paper, then we will start moving it towards the community side, and we'll see how the governance model and allocation of funds from the fund pool will be done. But yeah, and the use case for the Lend token. So Etlend is the platform, and the token we're creating and selling to our investors is called the Lend token. And basically, first of all, we wanted to create a use case for the token, and encourage people to use the Lend token on the platform instead of any other ERC20 token. So we're offering like 20% discount on transaction fees when you use our token. But yeah, and also the airdrops will be issued to the holders of the Lend tokens that are actively using the tokens. But yeah, maybe that's good. You want to add something?
Yeah, about
you're the mastermind behind the airdrop, so
I think like we're really like a startup. I mean, we had like a €0 marketing budget, so we kind of came quite far. But of course, like the biggest issues now are in the sense of basically the user adaptation and also kind of having a good kind of user experience on the DApp. So that's kind of complicated, but that's something that we're working on.
Yeah, looking for developers as well. So
yeah.
But yeah, so this would be basically a short overview of the ICO market. So how familiar are you guys? Everyone knows what ICOs are? Yeah, okay, good.
Who hates them? I don't
couple
really.
Of people, yeah. It's a controversial topic for sure. Raising too much money without, having any product or anything concrete, it becomes questionable. And I think it was Andreas Antonopoulos who had a great example. If you're a chef and you have a restaurant and you sold every single table for the next 30 years and everybody's already paid, will you actually be in the kitchen cooking? But yeah, that is basically what's happening with the ICO. So just as a benchmark, I wrote down that Toldor raised capital in 2017. So this year alone, we are looking at 1.7 billion. Q2, the ICOs raised approximately $730 or $40 million, if I'm not mistaken. And the venture capital funding raised for blockchain projects during the same time period was like 250 million. So a lot of boom there, like the internet in the early 90s, a lot of scammers as well, bad intentions, and there will most likely, or for certain, there will be a lot of projects failing, but 90% of startups fail anyway, so I don't see why that's any different
extra
from
9% doesn't
yeah, extra 9% will be on top of that. But yeah, so yeah, this is where we differ as well. So we will actually, or we already have a proof of concept and a working product, whereas majority of projects have no product and a very grand vision for the future. I'm not saying that if you raise like 100 million, you'll have funding for the rest of your life, and if you aim for something big, you might succeed in 10 years. But we wanted to bring it to a more practical level so that there would actually be users that can use the product. But yeah, currently there's no regulatory framework basically for the ICO industry or any best practices. The past 1-2 months we've seen some changes in this topic, where China is moving in on the ICOs, first banning the ICOs and then banning the exchanges, or at least putting them on hold. So that is definitely a strong move from the regulatory body towards not only the ICOs but the cryptocurrency space in general. And the other one is, but yeah, on the contrary, there is also friendly environments such as Zug, and yeah, also best practices and frameworks around these token sales. Not too much of those exist yet. I wrote down a few. SAFT, which is a simple agreement for future tokens, which is basically a framework for creating a token that actually has functionality and a use case. And IGFS it's a similar framework. You can check it out if you want to. But yeah, where we are different, working product platform, proof of concept, up and running. We actually had it up and running before the token sale, and we've been looking at these legal aspects, and I actually came across like 2 days ago the case study of Colony doing basically a regulatory compliant token sale. And they were trying to comply with all the regulations, and they were basically compliant, but when they were about to launch, they were basically told that they're not compliant. And the reason that they were not compliant was basically the fact that their platform that they were raising funds for was not live when the funds were raised. And this creates some kind of problem. Like I said, these are not set in stone. Most of them, if they are considered securities, and that goes according to the Howey test, and that leaves a lot of room for interpretation. So yeah, we will see how many of these tokens will be considered securities, and maybe if the SEC or some other legal entity will go after this, but only the future will tell this. And yeah, also one very important thing to come away from the security aspect is, having a use case for the token and functionality. And this we have done with Etlend, not only through the fact that you use the token as collateral on the platform and you get benefits for it, but yeah, well, that's basically it. What else do we have for use cases?
Well, I think besides of the discounts and airdrops, we have the kind of referral program.
Yeah, that as well. And also we're adding other tokens as collateral as well, so a lot of use cases on that front. And one of the parts of the Howey test is that there's no expectation of future profits, and according to our token sale, there is no expectation of future profits. Because we have a small market cap and we're raising such a small ICO, we still think and believe that the price should go up and will go up once we get more users and get the platform up and running, actually. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this slide. And I think that's, there's a short introduction to all our team members.
Yeah, we're kind of a decentralized team, so.
But yeah, just to point out how decentralized we are, Jordan is from Paris, Chitendra is from India, Adnan is from Melbourne, Australia, Sergey, Germany, Kersten, Germany, Scott is from
Gibraltar.
Ah, okay, cool. Jin is from Korea.
He's actually in Los Angeles now.
But he's Korean, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Rowan is from Bali. But yeah, a lot of people from all over the world.
And and also kind of, I think like most of the blockchain projects are formed like this way. You have basically Slack, and then you get a team up, and then you start working on a project. So it's kind of an interesting way. I mean, maybe at some point, I think we don't have an office, and I don't know, like maybe in Switzerland we have, but it's kind of, I think like the decentralization is seen in every aspect of the project. And also kind of regarding on the ICOs, it's not like the main topic, but kind of when you guys will develop dApps, you should really mind on the product that you build. Basically that for example, it might seem, your idea might seem quite nice on the paper, but do you really want to promise that idea that you have in theory without getting it into practice. So that's something that we learned. Basically, we developed the application first, then basically wrote a white paper afterwards, so that we actually understand the issues that we have and kind of the use cases better. So I kind of recommend to do that, because otherwise it's not. I mean, blockchain development is kind of different when you have to interact with the distributed ledger. So not everything is possible today. So that's something that I would recommend to keep in mind. And also kind of there's a big fight between I wouldn't say fight, but kind of competition between the kind of token sale ICO participants and the venture capital, because like we're kind of small startup, and basically we are approached by like we have the token sale, and then we have been approached like I think like a daily basis from this different kind of venture capitalists. So basically it seems that kind of the funding is going to the sort of crowd sale format. So that's something to keep in mind when you guys are starting some sort of venture.
All right. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.